Hey there, I'm Alex. Today I want to walk you through something that I shared on LinkedIn about a month ago, and it was this video where I just scattered a bunch of cubes on a card in Nuke, rendered a depth map, and then basically rendered an endless amount of variations of a cityscape. So I figured I got so many people reached out about how I was doing this, a bunch of private messages on LinkedIn, that I figured when I had a little time I just put this video together. So today's the day. Um, Aside from that, I got under a lot of people reached out regarding my previous video where I asked if people were interested in me actually walking you through day one of Comfyui and then make it into a series where we progressively add on top of it. So I'm definitely going to be doing that, but that takes a bit of time to set up, mainly just because there's so much to learn that I want to make sure that I break it down properly in a way that is sustainable for me, in a way that's chunky enough for you to learn from, but not overwhelm you at the same time. So just give me a little time. I'll set it up. Especially the first two videos, or the first two episodes, I guess, will be the most important ones because there's a lot of concepts and a lot to understand. So this deviates a bit from that because I'm going to go straight into how to build it in case you're already comfortable with Comfy UI. But even if you aren't, it's easy enough to set up. So patience on the Comfy UI series. It's coming. So let me just get into it and show you how to achieve this rather quickly. So let me go ahead and stop that video for a second, and I'm going to go ahead and actually open Nuke. Right, if I can close this. So this is what I generated last time. So it's, if we look at the our scene here, right? What you can see is I just have a bunch of cubes scattered. And just in case you're curious, right? I didn't place these by hand. There's this great tool called mscattergeo, right? By, I believe the artist is Mark Joey Tang. He's done a bunch of awesome Nuke tools, and this is one I go back to often because it's just great at what it does. So also this is available from the Nuke Survival Toolkit, so you can grab it from there. I mean, as long as you install that, you should have access to it. And the way this works is that it samples a geometry, right? And you can have it select from either the image that's connected to it, or you can just select the vertices themselves, and then it'll scatter along those vertices. So I won't get into a tutorial how to do this because that's been covered by the author on YouTube, so you can just go ahead and check it out. But just so you know, that's how I did it. So I just grabbed the card, and then I used mscatter just to do the scattering of my cubes, right? So that's what's happening here. I just have the one cube, which then gets scattered through on that card. So then I just placed a card just so that we have some more coverage, so that our depth map is a bit doesn't just run out. So that way we have a bit of coverage there. And I just graded it and I just rendered it as a depth map, just so that it would have that black and white image. So I figured, just because I've already done that one, let me just show you how you can actually be a bit more creative with it if it's something you're interested in. I just grabbed a constant, and then I did a roto with a bit of a shape here. And then I softened it a bit and I placed that on a card. So if we look at it here in 3D space, if it will allow me, right? So there you see we have our card with our texture, and we only really care about the alpha, so that's what's happening there. I place that on the card, and then that goes into the mscatter, and I'm selecting density map. So it'll be, as you can imagine, look at it'll be white, it'll scatter on the white, but it won't scatter on the black. So if you do that, and then you just press generate, right? You can just go into it'll produce this msnap, right? So when you hit the generate button here on the mscatter geo, it'll generate this msnap node. So this is the result of your scatter, right? So in this case, I just have, again, just a lonesome cube here, and then I placed it on my msnap, and then I just changed a few of the values here just so it was a bit more interesting, because otherwise you just get a uniform distribution of the exact same cube, but so you can just give it a bit of a different differentiation in terms of the scale and how they're placed. So that's what I did there. And then again, I just added a card that goes into infinity just so that we have something for our depth map. And then this is the result of our cubes being scattered, right? So again, I shuffled out the depth map, I graded it just so it's a bit more more friendly with Comfy, or you can just play around with it. But just so I didn't want to have that harsh line back there, so that's why I graded a bit, just so we get a nice taper. And then again, you definitely probably should just do render. I was lazy, so I just took a screenshot like that, right? And then that screenshot, once you have it, you can go into Comfy, which we're gonna do now, right? And then on a load image, you can just right click and, or actually you don't need to right click. You just select the load image and you can just say Control V and it'll paste it instead of rendering. You should definitely render though. I was lazy. So, okay, into a workflow. This is actually pretty straightforward and there's not a lot happening here. So let me just walk you through in case you're very new. So I am running this using SDXL. You can use any flavor you like as long as it has a control net, which is what's driving this. And the control net, think of it as a bit of a it'll hold the hand of the generation and guide it through. And in this case, what's guiding it is our depth map. So it'll basically tell it this is the structure you're going to be building the image on, and basically yes, generate it, right? So again, SDXL, you can the checkpoint I'm using is Juggernaut XL. I'm gonna share a link to the Civit AI website where you can just go ahead and grab it. I believe it's like, I don't know, 7 gigs or something like that. And then you're also going to need the control net, the control net union for SDXL, which is the one I'm using. There's different ones, but this is a pretty good one. And I believe this is like 3 gigs. If you go into files and versions, yeah, 2.5 gigs. So that is the extent of what you need to download, and of course install Comfyui. Then we have the prompt. So what it is you want to do with those cubes, right? So in this case, I said city skyline, sunny, midday, cinematic. Keywords like this. The more you use, the more you use different checkpoints from these image generators, you'll see some of them like stuff like this. Like otherwise, it produces a bit of bland images. So you'll get the hang of it the more you use it. So in that case, I'm not giving it any negative prompt. So unless I'm seeing something weird on my images, I'm gonna add it here. But because it's a fairly straightforward generation, I need to do that. So again, then we go into the control net, which is what's doing the hand holding in terms of the generation, telling it this is the structure you're going to be using, which in our case is our depth map, right? And this we're using that Promax, the control net union that I was mentioning before. So then we have our strength. So how much you want it to adhere to that to that control net or to that depth map, right? You want to give it a bit of freedom or not? Then this is the place to do it. Empty latent image, what this is doing is just setting up the canvas resolution. So in my case, I'm doing an HD image. And again, just loading our depth map, because I was lazy and I didn't properly render it at a correct size because I was just winging it. I just added a image resize just to make sure that it was a 720p image. You can go higher, but that's enough for what we're doing. So then that goes into our cave sampler, which is kind of the brain that generates the image based on all the inputs that are coming in. And that's kind of it. So then we get something like this, right? So if I go ahead and let me just turn on my save image here. If I go here and I hit the Q button again, you'll see the generation is actually quite quick. I think it's like 10 or 15 seconds on average for an HD image in my case with my settings, right? It's going to vary a bit. And keep in mind I'm recording as well. So yeah, 12.37 seconds. You can see it down here. 12.37 seconds, so rather quick. And then you have your output, right? So what's interesting about this is that if I compare here with our depth map, you see it's really sticking to it quite well, right? And that's happening because the strength of our control net, again, the hand holder in this case, is actually quite high, so 0.85. So what happens if I go lower, right? So let's say something like 0.4. Let's see, let's give it a second. Right. So what's happened now is that it's more or less like you can see the line, right? But it's not sticking to it as much as it was before. You can make it out here, right? But then it just loses it, and that's because we're telling it, the strength of the hand holding has been lowered substantially. So now you're giving it a bit more freedom when it comes to generating that image. So again, I'm going to go back to something like 0.75 is usually a good number to start, and then you can start playing with it. And again, I'm not going to go very deep into how the control nets work, but that's basically where you want to play until you understand what the other two are doing. So again, I've increased it to 0.75. So again, if we look at it now, it's sticking closer to the image we want to be creating with our depth map, right? So we have our image here, right? And then, yeah, this is, of course, just for a cityscape, but you can just say instead of sunny day, we can say at night, right? So let me just get rid of that comma, city skyline at night. And then we queue our prompt again, and we see, let's see what comes out. So I have my seeds set to random. So every time I generate, even if it's the same prompt, it's going to give you a different image just because that's how it works. And again, if we look at it here, you can see even this building here, it's respecting that that cube that we had placed there. So you can see very quickly you can just generate a bunch of stuff. And what's interesting about this stuff is that this is, of course, just for still, right? But you can get a bit more creative, a bit more advanced with this, and you can just create the still. And once you find one you like, you can just project it and then go back. You can just go back into Nuke, project it onto your geo, and then if you have a bit of a camera move, you can put it at the end position of the camera, and then you can in-paint the areas that don't have texture. So that's well, quite a bit more advanced, but there's a lot you can do with this. So this is just a starting point, and you can be very creative about it. You always have to give it a prompt, so you can just if you just run it blank, it's just going to give you a white square, so nothing too exciting. But it doesn't, like, try to think about the box, because there is really no limitation to what this can do. It's in terms of creativeness, right? So you can do stuff like, let's say we just say Lego, right, instead of buildings. What happens if we just say Lego? Or we can say, actually, it's say Lego on wooden table, right? So if we do that, I'm going to queue that instead. You see, now it created our first set of Legos here. And while not perfect, there are ways of fixing this. Like there's Laura, so you can find on 7AI for Lego. So it'll make sure that all the Legos look like proper Legos. So you see, now we have Legos on a wooden table. And again, it's respecting, like if you look at the lines here of our depth map, it's really sticking to that, right? And you can be as loose or not as you want in the control net. So really interesting stuff. You can, let's say we do, let's say a container yard. That could be interesting. Container, if I could type container yard, right? And let's see what comes out. So as we're expecting, it looks like it's building some containers for us. Interesting image. Let's see what comes out. There we have it. So again, respecting our cubes, right? And building that structure for us, and then filling in the gaps in the background. And again, this is just the vanilla image that comes out. With this, of course, as compositors, you're going to do much more with this. But even before you're done in Comfy, you can just take this into something like a creative upscaler that you can have within Comfy, or you can take it into something like Magnifique. I don't particularly like using any online services, just because I want to make sure that any work images that I do, I keep them within my closed environment. So but you have the option, if you're just playing around, just take it to Magnifique and it'll do some wild stuff for you. Or you can just use a workflow like Magnifique inside a Comfy, and you can achieve a lot of cool stuff. And again, this is just like, you can just say, let's say here, sugar cubes, right? So you can start thinking what kind of images you can do. It's like, honestly, anything you can think of, it'll try to push the image generation in that direction. And as long as the shapes more or less make sense, it'll do a pretty good job. So you can see here very, very quickly how it sticks to our depth map. So this goes for a lot of stuff. So let me just say here, glacier. This goes for a lot of things. You could also do it for more complex geometries, right? Like this is just a bare bones example that, as you can see, you can put it together in 5 minutes, probably less, right? But you can use it for like proper complex geometry, and it'll do a very good job if you're smart about how you set it up, smart about selecting the proper checkpoint, and knowing how to work well with the control net. There's quite a bit you can do, and actually you can get pretty interesting results. So again, you can just take the output, take it into Nuke, and then you can do a lot of stuff with it. So I just wanted to walk you through, again, not terribly complicated. Like I told you, I'm going to be sharing links to everything in the description like I always do. And hopefully, thank you for being patient. For all the people that reached out, want to know how to set this up. And well, now you know it. See you next time. Cheers.